I'm just going to have bring Rushanara in for one very quick question, I think, on the G7, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you, Governor. You mentioned the G7, and I just wanted to bring it back to the report by the IMF about vaccinations, mass vaccinations, and one of the things that the report points to, and it's in an article that was written by Gordon Brown recently, that the cumulative gain would be 9 trillion by 2025, 3.6 trillion accruing to the advanced economies, which will recruit about 1 trillion in tax revenues. So in terms of the return, we would get 35 times more than 35 times what we would invest in vaccinations, in trade and output. Do you think that, well, I'm taking this opportunity because you mentioned the discussions you're having with the Chancellor. Do you think that we, Britain, and of course you and Sir John and others were involved after the financial crisis in terms of international leadership roles to try and address the financial crisis and implications, is there an equivalent that Britain can do through our Chancellor and your input to try and get the vaccination programme rolled out globally so that it doesn't damage our economic gains in the future? And in fact, we have a great deal to gain if we can find a way of financing it, particularly in the through the wealthier countries.
I mean, short answer is yes. It's obviously very important. By the way, I mean, it's more on the government than the central bank side of G7.
Sure, I appreciate that.
But you're having those I think I can sort of speak for the UK presidency for a moment as a whole. I mean, it is a priority. And it certainly does feature prominently in the discussions of the G7 and what we tend to call the finance track for finance ministers and central bank governors. And it's important. I mean, you're right, it's important.
Well, just because we are seeing a growth in vaccine nationalism, and yet the economic gains. I mean, there's often a binary discussion that has happened in the past year. Health and pandemic risks versus economy, and this data is really powerful in showing what we can achieve in terms of economic output globally if we can sort out the vaccination program and paying for it.
Yeah,
and getting it done internationally.
John wants to.
Just to say, I mean, I think that that argument is understood internationally. That actually this matters not just because it's abroad; it matters because you don't defeat the pandemic until we have a worldwide vaccination. And I think, but this is for the Treasury and government, but I think the UK government is putting up 1.2 or 1.3 billion into aid on the pandemic, of which the large bulk is development and distribution of vaccines. And I think there's a contribution to Gavi, the fund that was set up, I think under Gordon Brown actually, some years ago. So there is an effort going through the G7. And I think actually that argument is recognised more on the pandemic, that actually aid abroad actually helps us than it has been in previous crises. So I'm optimistic that it will be possible to provide some of that finance.
Thank you. Well, we're looking forward to seeing progress in the G7 to get beyond the current commitments, so that we can have the vaccination numbers reaching the kind of population scale that we need in other countries. I mean, India kind of focuses mind on what's happening, and India is meant to be one of our major trading partners post-Brexit. We're meant to be doing trade deals, and if economies like that are on their knees, that's not going to help us.
No, fully agree.
Thank you.
Well,